Hey guys, welcome to Best Movie Recap. Today I am going to explain a 2004 American action movie called Troy. Warning. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Today's movie starts with Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, who has already united most of the Greece kingdoms under his rule, and now he is going for his last battle to control all the Greece. Before the battle starts, he talks with Triopas, the king of Thessaly. And they both agreed to let one of their best fighters decide who wins the battle, rather than engaging in an open war that will lead to a lot of kills from both sides. Triopas calls upon the giant Boreas, while Agamemnon calls upon Achilles, the legendary warrior of Greece. Achilles lives to fight, but he refuses to associate with Agamemnon, preferring instead to seek his own destiny and be immortalized in history. Achilles easily defeats Boreas. After that, Triopas offers the scepter of Thessaly to Achilles to pass on to Agamemnon as a sign of loyalty, but Achilles refuses and said, "He is not my king." On the other side, Menelaus, the king of Sparta, meet with the two princes of Troy, Hector and Paris, in an effort to negotiate a peace treaty. However, Paris sneaks away to be with Menelaus's beautiful wife Helen, whom he loves dearly. He convinces her to marry him and to leave with him to Troy. Hector saw his brother Paris coming out of Helen's room. He warned him that if he bring any trouble to Troy, he will kill him. But Paris didn't listen to him and hides Helen on the ship. When Hector finds out what his brother did, he gets really angry, but it was too late to return to Sparta with Helen and seek pardon from Menelaus. After realizing that Helen is gone, Menelaus meets with Agamemnon, his elder brother, and asks for his help to conquer Troy and retrieve his wife. Agamemnon agrees directly because he was also waiting for this chance for a long time, and also conquering Troy will give him control of the Aegean Sea. His vice tells him that destroying the walls of Troy is truly impossible, and to win this war we gonna need a legendary warrior like Achilles. Agamemnon said, "Even if I call him he won't come," but his vice said, "Don't worry, I know someone who could convince him." The next morning, Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, under the orders of Agamemnon, visits Achilles on his island to convince him to accompany them in the conquest of Troy. Odysseus finds Achilles training his young cousin Patroclus to better use his sword. After a small conversation, Achilles refuses to go with them and said, "I don't have any problem with Troy, why I would fight them." But Odysseus is truly smart. He convinces Achilles that this war will be written in the history, and everyone who participates in it, his name will be known for thousands of years. Then he gives him time to think and he left. Later on that day, Achilles seeks advice from his mother. She said, "If you choose to stay home, you will find a beautiful wife, raise a family, and die old and loved. But if you go to Troy, you will be killed, but you will also find an eternal glory and history will remember your name for thousands of years." Achilles agrees to join Agamemnon's campaign against Troy, but he decided to bring his own warriors, the fierce and infamous Myrmidons, under the command of Eutorus, and Patroclus accompanies them as well. Meanwhile, Hector and Paris return to Troy with Helen, where they are greeted warmly by their fellow Trojans. The city is guarded by a high, thick wall that has remained impenetrable since its founding. They meet their father, the king Priam, who welcomes Helen and praises her beauty. Paris meets his beautiful cousin Briseis, who reveals that she is now a servant in the temple of Apollo. Later on that day, Hector tells his father that he is totally against this war because now they will start a deadly war against Greece due to Paris' selfish actions. At this moment, Paris asks Helen to run away with him, but she refuses and said, "Even if we escape, Menelaus gonna follow us." The next day, Hector wakes up with the drums of war. Then he sees many of the Greek ships on the sea. At this moment, Achilles gives an impassioned speech to his men, then he unleashes them on the enemies. Concerned for his cousin's safety and inexperience, Achilles orders Patroclus to stay and watch the ship. The Myrmidons are the first to arrive at the beach. They start fighting and making their way to the temple of Apollo. Meanwhile, a strong warrior named Ajax sees Achilles and his crew fighting, and he orders his men to row faster. After arriving at the beach, Ajax starts killing all the warriors of Troy. In a defiant move, and despite a warning from Eutorus, Achilles decapitates the statue of Apollo. The Prince Hector leads a group of warriors to help and save those who are still stuck on the beach. He split them by sending few to fight against Ajax, while the rest run with him into the temple where he confronts Achilles, but the latter refuses to fight him. He said it is too early for a prince to die, then he orders his men to let him go. Briseis, the cousin of Hector, is taken captive, and she is brought to Achilles' tent as his prize. She berates Achilles for killing the priests of Apollo before he is summoned to see Agamemnon, who was preparing to celebrate the victory. There, Achilles and Agamemnon argue about the victory and who is the one who will be known in history. Agamemnon goes further by bringing in Briseis, which makes Achilles gets angry. He threatens to kill the soldiers for her, but she angrily interjects, saying too many men have died today. If killing is your only talent, that's your curse. I don't want anyone to die for me. Achilles stops and decides that he will no further aid Agamemnon in the siege. Later on that night, Priam seeks advice from his advisors on the best way to defend against the Greeks. But Paris offers an alternative to the bloodshed. He wants to fight Menelaus for Helen. The winner will take her home, and the loser will be burned before the nightfall. After that, Priam meets with Paris in the courtyard and admits that all the wars he had were only for power or land, but war fought for love makes more sense. Then he gives Paris the sword of Troy and said, "The spirit of Troy is in this sword, and as long as a Trojan carries it, our people have a future." Meanwhile, Hector meets his wife and son. Andromache reveals that she fears for his life and she can't imagine living on without him, but Hector tells her to not worry. Outside, Hector sees and pursues a cloaked person, just to find that it's Helen trying to leave the city. She is remorseful for being the sole reason so many Trojan men died that day, but Hector convinces her that the returning to Menelaus will not end the war and that she is now the princess of Troy. The two armies met outside the Trojan walls. Before the battle starts, Agamemnon tried to make a deal with Hector. He said, "You must bring back the wife of my brother and Troy must submit to my command whenever I call it to fight for me." But Hector refused and said no son of Troy will ever submit to a foreign ruler. After that, Paris proposed a duel with Menelaus for Helen's hand instead of the battle. Agamemnon refuses the offer, but after talking with his brother, he accepts. Although secretly he was going to invade the city anyway. The two begin their fight and Menelaus is clearly stronger than Paris, who was fighting under his brother's advice of waiting until Menelaus gets tired, but Paris is wounded and disarmed, and before Menelaus can deliver a death blow, Paris ducks away and crawls back to his brother. Stunned at his cowardice, Menelaus demands the fight to continue and threatened to kill Paris next to his brother if he did not step away. Hector, who considered that the fight is already over, defends his brother by driving his sword through Menelaus, killing him. Enraged, Agamemnon charged forward with his army. Then a battle followed, in which many of Agamemnon's soldiers were killed by the Trojan archers. Watching from his hilltop, Achilles curses under his breath at Agamemnon's inability to keep his ranks in formation. Hector proves to be a smart warrior, and he overpowers the Greeks with his tactics. During the battle, Hector saw the giant Ajax destroying and killing many Troy fighters, and no one was able to kill him or stand against him. He goes for him, and after a bloody fight, Hector manages to kill him, which made all the warriors happy. Odysseus advises Agamemnon to fall back before losing his entire army. Agamemnon accepts, and then the Greek soldiers retreat to the beach, where their archers provide a defense. Later on that night, Ajax and Menelaus are cremated in the Greek camp. After that, Agamemnon and Odysseus argue about why they lost the battle. Odysseus suggests that Agamemnon put his reservations aside and enlist Achilles to fight again. Outside, Briseis is tossed around between Greek soldiers, having been given to them by Agamemnon for their amusement, but Achilles saves her from them. After that, Briseis sneaks into Achilles' hut to kill him, but instead, she falls for him, and they become lovers. Achilles decides that he's had enough of war and offers to take Briseis away from Troy. Afterward, he speaks with Eutorus and tells him that they will go home. But Patroclus feels sad because he hoped to take part in the battle. On the other side, Priam consults with his advisors again for the next step. The general Glaucus wants to strike preemptively, and the highest priest Archiptolemus claims that Troy is favored by the gods, citing bird omens. Despite Hector's warnings to stay behind their walls, Priam favors his advisors and issues an attack before the daybreak. The Trojans attack at night, shooting fire arrows in front of the Greek camp while rolling large hay balls towards them. The attack wakes the Greeks who assembled before the camp. At this moment, Achilles appears in his armor and rallies the troops to the battle. He fights his way toward Hector, and the two engage in combat. All the Greeks and Trojan soldiers surround them, but something seems wrong because Achilles looks weak until Hector slits his throat with a swift slash of his sword. Achilles falls gasping for breath, while the Myrmidons look on in horror, but when Hector removes his helmet, he discovers that the man he wounded is not Achilles. Hector feels sad, but then drives his sword into the boy's chest to finish him. Then he addresses Odysseus and tells him they fought enough today. Before leaving, Odysseus tells Hector that Patroclus was Achilles' cousin. Later on, Achilles is informed of his cousin's death by Uterus and vows revenge. Worried that Achilles will surely seek vengeance, Hector shows his wife Andromache a secret tunnel in case he dies and the city falls. He instructs her to take their child and any survivors out of the city to the Mount Ida. Achilles put his cousin on a funeral pyre and sets it alight. Agamemnon watches the fire and says that boy has just saved the war for us. The next day, Achilles arrives outside Troy and challenges Hector for a fight. Knowing that death is waiting for him, Hector says his final goodbyes to his loved ones, including his wife and son. The two meets outside the gates of Troy, where Achilles throws down his helmet so that Hector will be able to see his opponent. Though Hector tries to reason, Achilles is bent on bloodlust. As they begin to fight, Priam and Paris watch, while Helen comforts Andromache, who can't bring herself to look. The two fight furiously, breaking each other's spears. During the fight, Hector stumbled on a stone and fell, but Achilles refused to attack him and said, "I will not let a stone take away my victory." Achilles overpowers Hector and throws a spearhead into Hector's shoulder before stabbing him in the heart with his sword. He then ties Hector's legs together behind his chariot and drags him away back to the beach while the Trojans look on in horror. Later on that night, Priam in disguise sneaks into the camp and implores Achilles to return Hector's body for a proper funeral. Ashamed of his actions, Achilles agrees and also states that Hector was the best fighter he had ever fought. Then he allows Briseis to return to Troy with Priam promising a 12-day truce so that Hector's funeral rites may be held in peace. When Agamemnon hears of Achilles' secret treaty with Priam, he becomes insane. After 12 days, the Trojans discover that the beach has been abandoned and various bodies lie in the sand. They appear to have been taken by disease, and in the heart of the camp, a large wooden horse has been erected. Paris tells his father to burn the horse immediately, but Priam brings the horse into the city, where it's revered as a sign of the end of the war. A Trojan scout was hiking through the cliffs outside the city, comes upon a cove apart from the main beach, and discovers the Greek armada hiding there. However, he is killed by an arrow before he can warn the rest of Troy. Meanwhile, the whole city celebrates into the night. Once everything has quieted down, the horse opens and Achilles, Odysseus and a small detachment of Greek soldiers emerge and slay several guards and open Troy's gates. The Greek army quickly pours into the city, pillaging and burning homes and killing any Trojan who stands in their way, while a tearful Priam can only watch. Agamemnon approaches behind him and stabs him in the back, then Briseis kills him with a knife. His guards accost her, but Achilles kills them as he is helping her up. Paris arrives and shoots an arrow through Achilles' left heel and kills him. Then Briseis goes with Paris and they both escape. Achilles' body is burned honorably on a funeral pyre within the ruins of Troy the following day as Odysseus watches and exults. "If they ever tell my story, let them say I walked with giants. Men rise and fall like the winter wheat, but these names will never die. Let them say I lived in the time of Hector, tamer of horses. Let them say I lived in the time of Achilles." Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button and turn on the notifications bell.